AmaBhungane investigation reveals that the City of Johannesburg in 2008 sold what has been described as the most valuable land in Sandton to a politically connected consortium, which is yet to pay 13 years later. The developer is said to have taken possession of the land in 2013. But the project never went ahead as intended. Well, the person who's been doing all the digging on the story is AmaBhungane Centre for Investigative Journalism's Susan Comrie. Susan, good evening. Always a pleasure being in conversation with you. So, by the looks of things and just the sheer trail of records that you've had to work through, this is a story that has been going on for a couple of years and that AmaBhungane has also been following for a number of years.
Yeah, absolutely. As you said, this is a story that goes back many years. As you've pointed out, the original tender was awarded in 2008. The land gets transferred in 2013, and it's really dragged on since then. Effectively now the land is sitting in a liquidated company, or a company that is been placed into liquidation, and there's really kind of no end in sight for the city and no kind of resolution about when they will actually get paid and if the development will actually go ahead. But as you pointed out as well, it's also one that we at AmaB have been working on for quite a while. We've had sort of access to various records to do with Regiment's capital, and as part of that process, we found kind of additional information that we really thought needed to be in the public domain.
Susan, let's just talk about this land. Where is it and what was it earmarked for? So what is the development that was supposed to take place on this land?
So you will have seen this land if you've ever taken the Sandton cow train. Effectively, it's the land that sits on top of the Sandton cow train station. Most of the time when you drive past there, you'll see sort of awnings up covering the sides of the land. But essentially, it's 3 hectares of land, and it's incredibly strategically placed. Essentially, the idea was to link the Sandton cow train station with Nelson Mandela Square and the rest of Sandton. And it would have been this kind of, luxury development, a 5-star hotel, restaurants, an art gallery, all of these things. It would have really brought all of Sandton together. That, however, has never happened.
Who was said to benefit from this land? Because we understand that there were promises that were made for how the profits of this development would flow to deserving communities within the Sandton precinct.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the documents we found quite early on was that Regiments had kind of done a calculation. Regiments was the major shareholder of this transaction. They'll be better known to most people as kind of state capture kingpins who had worked with the Guptas. This kind of predates all of that history, though. So essentially, they had done calculations quite early on and reckoned that around 1.8 billion rand in profit would flow to the shareholders of the development. Now, a large portion of that would go to them. However, they had promised that around 17.5% would be owned by 3 different charitable trusts. Now, those were trusts set up to benefit students, to benefit youth, and also to benefit, crucially, the people of Alexandra Township. Now, those trusts were registered, from what we can tell, but shares were never transferred into their name. So while other shareholders in the consortium had the opportunity in around 2014 to start selling their shares and start making, several million rand from those shares, those charitable trusts never were given that opportunity to benefit.
Let's talk about how much money has been made by those that have been behind this project so far, and why it is that none of that money has effectively flowed into the city's coffers, if I'm reading things correctly.
Yeah, I mean, it's a complicated one. Essentially, the major benefit that has been transferred to the consortium is the land itself. Now, the land was sold in the agreement signed in 2009 was that the land would be sold for 280 million rand. There's various strings that come attached with that, but that was the purchase price that they had put on the land. The land itself is worth quite a bit more than that. So the consortium itself they've had this very valuable piece of land transferred into their name. What's kind of curious, and what we sort of dealt with in today's part of the investigation, was how people who were cut into the consortium were able to sell their shares. Now, they're selling their shares back most of the time, back to regiments. So they're getting money from regiments. But essentially, the injustice that we've described is that you have some people being able to turn this deal into money, and the city itself, who own the land, not being able to benefit from it.
What does this mean going forward, particularly for the political links, Susan, that you've also been drawing out of these connections and, really following the paper trail in terms of who's involved where, getting a share of what, and how that seems to be linking us back to some of the country's political elite?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we know that regiments was a major player, and that, particularly the ANC in Johannesburg benefited enormously from regiments' largesse. We know that a sort of 2% share of the consortium was given to Sipho Twala, who is the former mayor Parks Tau's brother-in-law. At the time, Mr. Tau was the MMC of Finance and Economic Development and had a degree of oversight over this project. There are question marks, though, about who else might be in the consortium. One of the documents we found, which is, somewhat inconclusive, sort of set out various shareholders in the transaction. It included a list of strategic partners, which would have, we don't know if they were sort of considered to be part of the deal, but never sort of eventually cut in. There are some interesting names there, including Mr. Tau himself, the former mayor Jeff Makubo, and a senior executive from Chancellor House.
What is the city saying about this development, given the fact that, of course, you would still have people who are waiting on the periphery for this development to get underway? Because as long as it's lying idle, that's, an opportunity cost.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, the city's position is effectively that, look, developments take time to get going. They still seem bullish about it. They don't kind of concede that they made the wrong choice not to cancel the deal when they had the opportunity to do so. So they still seem bullish about it. One of the things that we have been asking the city about is, in sort of final months of Herman Mashaba's term as mayor, he had highlighted this project as one of the really problematic things that had happened under the previous administration, and had instituted a full forensic investigation, so he said, into this deal. We've asked the city what happened with that forensic investigation, what the outcome was, and they haven't been willing to comment in any way.
All right, Susan Comrie, let's leave it there for tonight. And certainly if you want to read the full depth of the work that she's been doing, you can head on over to the AmaBhungane website. And of course, she is with the Centre for Investigative Journalism.